Sarah Robinson's screams reverberated through the alien ship as the Tzenkethi torturer tightened the neural probe against her skull, not knowing that her father Jeffrey was the galaxy's deadliest super soldier, and he was coming for blood. Jeffrey Robinson was no stranger to war. For decades, he served as humanity's finest augmented special forces operative, an unstoppable one-man army deployed to the bloodiest battles across the galaxy. But after his wife died, the battle-weary soldier retired to a quiet frontier colony to raise Sarah, his young daughter, far from the echoes of his violent past. No one in the colony knew of Jeffrey's true identity. To them, he was just a caring single father, not a legendary superhuman warrior. Jeffrey was content to leave that life behind and watch his daughter grow up in peace, until the day that Tzenkethi came. The attack was sudden and ruthless. Alien dropships rained from the sky as the reptilian soldiers of Warlord Deneb stormed the colony, killing and capturing colonists to be enslaved. In the chaos, a Tzenkethi raid squad broke into the Robinson home and seized Sarah. Jeffrey fought back with lethal skill, but impacts to the head from alien shock batons put him down as his daughter was dragged away before his eyes. When Jeffrey came to, his daughter was gone, taken by the vicious invaders, but Sarah still had her emergency tracker he had given her. Booting up his armor's systems for the first time in years, Jeffrey locked onto Sarah's signal emanating from Deneb's dagger-shaped command ship, looming in orbit. Aboard that vessel, the young girl was brought before Warlord Deneb himself. The alien commander was confident he could break the small human, extracting any intel on the colony's defenses to aid his conquest. He would make an example of the child. Sarah endured brutal interrogation techniques at the hands of Deneb's torturers. Neural probes sent searing pain through her head. Hits from shock prods convulsed her small body. Serrated blades left bloody gashes across her skin. But she would not yield. With each defiant refusal to answer Deneb's questions, the warlord's rage grew. In all his cycles, he had never seen a mere juvenile maintain such resilience. His men also reported her strange tracker device was emitting a signal. Was it transmitting their location to human forces? Enraged, Deneb decided he would execute the girl in front of the other human captives to show the price of defiance, and prepared to deliver the killing slash from his own claws. That was when the alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Jeffrey had come for Sarah. The super soldier soared towards the massive alien vessel in a small, heavily armed shuttlecraft, the father's rage eclipsing any fear. His armor was fully powered up, muscles ready to unleash augmented fury, advanced weapons and explosives at his disposal. His HUD showed Sarah's signal on board. He narrowed his eyes as he armed the breaching charges on the shuttle's hull. It was time to remind the galaxy what a human super commando was capable of. Time to show them the terrible fury of a father whose daughter had been taken. Deneb would regret the day he laid claws on Jeffrey Robinson's little girl. As the shuttle accelerated towards Deneb's flagship, Jeffrey gripped his rifle tight, primed and ready. His superhuman reflexes, strength, and killing instincts were fully activated. He would scour that ship corridor by corridor until he had his daughter back. And God help any Tzenkethi that stood in his way. Jeffrey crouched low in the dense underbrush, his armor fading into the shadows as he and Sarah made their way through the alien wilderness. Their escape from Deneb's ship and the urban battle that had followed left them cut off and alone, with Tzenkethi kill teams scouring the colony for any trace of them. "The rebel base should be just ahead," Jeffrey said. "Keep your eyes sharp." Sarah nodded, gripping her scavenged pulse rifle tight. The traumatized girl was gone, replaced by a survivor, a fighter forged in the flames of pain and loss. They approached a hidden bunker entrance guarded by human soldiers. The leader, a grizzled bear of a man with a cybernetic eye, stepped forward, rifle raised. "That's close enough. Identify yourselves." "I'm Jeffrey Robinson. Special Forces, retired. This is my daughter, Sarah. We're looking for the resistance." The man scrutinized them warily. "How'd you find us?" "Let's just say I'm uniquely equipped to track rebel comms. Colonel Hawkins in charge here?" The man lowered his rifle a fraction. Maybe. What's it to you? We want to join the fight. I have abilities that could help turn the tide against the Tsenkethi. The rebel soldier scoffed. You some kind of big shot war hero? Jeffrey met his gaze. Something like that. They were escorted into the underground base, a hive of activity as humans and aliens worked feverishly on weapons, gear, and intel. Jeffrey and Sarah were brought before Colonel Hawkins. The rebel leader was unimpressed by the new arrivals. Why the hell should I trust you? For all I know, this is some kind of Tsenkethi trick. You're right not to trust easily, Colonel, Jeffrey said. But if I was with the Zen, you'd already be dead. Hawkins' eyes narrowed. Bold claim. You willing to prove it? An alarm blared through the base. Tsenkethi scouts approaching. They've found us. Jeffrey grabbed his rifle. Looks like you'll get your proof sooner than expected. He burst from cover as the alien scouts opened fire, his superhuman speed and reflexes kicking into overdrive. Jeffrey dodged and weaved through the plasma bolts, returning fire with deadly precision. His augmented muscles absorbed the recoil of his heavy rifle as he cut down Tsen after Tsen with blinding speed. The alien soldiers fell before him like wheat to a scythe. In seconds, it was over, their broken bodies littering the ground. Jeffrey stood unscathed, his armor barely scratched, as the awed rebels looked on. Hawkins walked up beside him, eyes wide with disbelief. God almighty, I'd heard rumors of human super soldiers, but I never thought... He turned to Jeffrey. Looks like I was wrong about you, Robinson. We could use someone with your skills. Jeffrey nodded grimly. Then let's get to work. What's your next target? Over the following days, Jeffrey and Hawkins planned strike after strike. Tsenkethi supply convoys ambushed, weapons caches destroyed, comm relays blown to pieces. Jeffrey was always at the tip of the spear, leading the rebels into battle with ruthless efficiency. Yet for every victory, Deneb's forces seemed to grow stronger, his grip on the colony tightening. Reports filtered in of atrocities committed against those who resisted, of a warlord's furious obsession to destroy the human soldier, making a mockery of his army. Jeffrey consoled a young rebel who had lost her family to Deneb's butchery. He won't stop, she said through her tears. He'll never stop hunting us. Then we take the hunt to him. Jeffrey's voice was cold as space. We cut the head off the snake. At a briefing, he outlined his plan to Hawkins and the others, to infiltrate Deneb's command ship, to end the alien commander's reign of terror permanently. Sarah stepped forward. I'm going with you, Dad. Jeffrey started to protest, but he saw the steel in his daughter's eyes. The little girl was gone. A warrior stood in her place. Okay, he said softly. Okay. As the rebel team fought their way through the command ship, consoles sparked and alien blood splashed the bulkheads. Jeffrey was a force of nature, his rifle and blades reaping a terrible toll. At last, they broke through to Deneb's sanctum. The warlord stood before them, a fusion sword in his hand, his body a mesh of flesh and machine. You think you've won, human? He snarled at Jeffrey. You've already lost everything. Father and daughter shared a glance, a nod. As one, they charged the warlord. The final battle joined. Deneb was fast, monstrously strong, but he had never faced foes like this. The battle raged through the sanctum, a whirlwind of blood and steel, neither side giving quarter. Deneb pinned Jeffrey against the wall, choking him. Sarah leapt on the warlord's back, stabbing viciously. Deneb roared in pain and fury, throwing the girl aside. Jeffrey surged forward in a blur, his hands locking around the alien's skull, servos in his armor whining with strain. There was a sick crack and Deneb fell, his head twisted at an unnatural angle. Jeffrey and Sarah leaned on each other as the Tsenkethi forces crumbled without their master. The battle was won. The colony was free. And the legend of the human super soldier and his daughter spread to the stars. Jeffrey wiped the sweat from his brow as he surveyed the aftermath of their victory against Deneb. The taste of triumph was short-lived as a rebel scout burst into the command center, panting heavily. Sir, we've intercepted Korak's transmissions. Deneb was just a puppet. There's a whole empire out there, and they're pissed. Jeffrey's blood ran cold. He turned to Colonel Hawkins, who nodded grimly. It's true, the Corax Dominion makes the Tsenkethi look like Boy Scouts. Before Jeffrey could process this, alarms blared throughout the base. A technician shouted, "Massive energy signatures detected entering the system. It's a Corax invasion fleet." The tactical display lit up with hundreds of enemy ships. At their center loomed a colossal dreadnought that dwarfed anything Jeffrey had ever seen. "That's the flagship of General Kravox," Hawkins said, his voice tight. "The Annihilator." Jeffrey's mind raced. Their ragtag rebel force stood no chance in a straight fight. But maybe. "We need to cut the head off the snake," he said. "I'll lead a strike team onto that flagship. Take out Kravox and we might stand a chance." Hours later, Jeffrey crouched in a stolen Corax shuttle with his handpicked team. Beside him sat Raxer, a hulking Vaxian warrior with 4 arms and skin like polished obsidian. "You sure about this, human?" Raxer growled. "Seems like suicide." Jeffrey grinned. "That's why it'll work." They slipped past the Corax fleet's outer defenses, masquerading as a supply ship. As they neared the flagship's docking bay, Jeffrey's comm crackled. "Dad, we're in position," Sarah's voice came through, "ready to commence diversionary attacks." "Copy that. Stay safe out there, kiddo." The team disembarked, moving swiftly through the flagship's winding corridors. They encountered their first patrol at a junction. Jeffrey's augmented reflexes kicked in as he dropped 2 Corax soldiers before they could raise their weapons. Raxer's 4 arms became a whirlwind of blades, cutting down 3 more. They fought their way deeper into the ship, Jeffrey's armor absorbing hits that would have vaporized a normal human. But the going got tougher as they neared the bridge. Robotic sentries joined the fray, their energy weapons scorching the walls. Jeffrey ducked behind a bulkhead, his rifle overheating. "We're running out of time!" That's when they hit the shadow blades. 8-foot-tall monstrosities of muscle and chrome, moving with inhuman speed. One of them grabbed a rebel fighter and snapped his spine like a twig. The battle became a blur of blood and circuitry. Jeffrey's team was pushed to the brink, their weapons barely scratching the shadow blade's armor. Raxer roared in pain as an energy blade severed one of his arms. "Jeffrey!" the Vaxian shouted. "Get to Kravox. I'll hold them off." Before Jeffrey could protest, Raxer charged the shadow blades, all 3 remaining arms swinging. The passage ahead cleared. Jeffrey sprinted for the bridge, his heart pounding. The doors hissed open to reveal General Kravox, a towering figure of sleek purple armor and pulsing energy weapons. "So," Kravox's voice boomed, "this is the human who dares defy the Corax Dominion." They clashed in a fury of superhuman strikes. Jeffrey's armor cracked under Kravox's blows, but he gave as good as he got. They grappled at the edge of a command platform, Jeffrey's augmented muscles straining against the alien general's cybernetic strength. Just as Kravox seemed about to overpower him, Jeffrey's comm buzzed. "Dad!" Sarah's voice came through. "The reactor core! It's vulnerable to a cascading feedback loop!" With a surge of strength, Jeffrey twisted free of Kravox's grip. He drove his fist into a weak point in the general's armor, unleashing a lethal burst of energy. Kravox fell, his systems sparking. Jeffrey raced for the reactor core, planting explosive charges as he went. Alarms blared as he fought his way to an escape shuttle, the ship coming apart around him. The shuttle burst free of the disintegrating flagship, narrowly avoiding the chain reaction that ripped through the Corax fleet. From the planet's surface, Sarah led the counterattack against the now leaderless invasion force. Hours later, as the dust settled, Jeffrey stood amid the rebel base. They'd won the day, but at a terrible cost, and he knew the real war was just beginning. A junior officer approached, holding a datapad. "Sir, we just received this transmission. Well, you need to see it." Jeffrey read the message, his eyes widening. Someone out there knew the Corax's secrets and how to stop them. But who? And could they be trusted? He looked up at the starry sky, knowing their next move would shape the fate of the stars. Jeffrey's fingers flew over the datapad, decrypting the mysterious transmission. His eyes widened as the message revealed itself. Holy shit, he breathed. Sarah leaned in. What is it, Dad? It's from a group called the Kaldi. They're a secret sect within the Corax Empire itself. Colonel Hawkins frowned. Can we trust them? Jeffrey shook his head. I don't know, but they claim to have knowledge that could turn this war around. The rebels gathered around as Jeffrey relayed the Kaldi's message, a hidden world called Azrathil, an ancient superweapon capable of neutralizing the entire Corax fleet. If this is true, Hawkins said, it could change everything. They formulated a plan. A small strike team would infiltrate Azrathil and secure the weapon. Jeffrey handpicked the operatives himself, including Sarah. You sure about this? He asked her. Sarah checked the charge on her rifle. Try and stop me. Their ship slipped into uncharted space, following the Kaldi's coordinates. Cosmic storms raged around them, threatening to tear the vessel apart. Proximity alert, the pilot shouted. Unknown ship approaching fast. Jeffrey tensed, ready for a fight, but the newcomer hailed them instead. Well, well, a gruff voice crackled over the comm. What brings you folks to this lovely neck of the woods? The voice belonged to Zarek, captain of a tribe of space scavengers. After tense negotiations, he agreed to guide them through the treacherous region, for a price. As they neared Azrathil, alarms blared. Their stealth systems had failed. Orbital defenses powering up, Sarah yelled. Jeffrey's mind raced. We need to take control of one of those platforms. It's our only shot. He led a boarding party across the vacuum of space, mag boots clanging as they landed on the defense platform. Corax defenders swarmed them, energy weapons flashing. Jeffrey's augmented reflexes kicked in as he dove and rolled, taking out 3 aliens in quick succession. Sarah moved like lightning at his side, her own enhancements on full display. They fought their way to the control center, Jeffrey's armor absorbing hits that would have vaporized a normal human. With seconds to spare, he input the captured codes, allowing their ship to slip past the planet's defenses. On the surface, ancient ruins stretched as far as the eye could see. Robotic sentries patrolled the crumbling structures, their sensors sweeping for intruders. Stay low, Jeffrey whispered. We need to find the central chamber. They navigated a maze of corridors and death traps. Laser grids, crushing walls, pit traps. The long-dead creators had left no shortage of surprises for unwanted guests. In orbit, a Corax battle group materialized from hyperspace. At its head, a monstrous dreadnought dripping with weapons. Morthax, Zarek spat the name. Kravox's successor. If he's here, we're in deep shit. The race was on. Jeffrey's team delved deeper into the ruins as Morthax's forces scoured the surface. Ancient guardians awoke, forcing the rebels into pitched battles against machines that had slumbered for millennia. At last, they reached the central chamber. A massive device pulsed with otherworldly energy. We made it, Sarah breathed. The words had barely left her mouth when the far wall exploded inward. Morthax stepped through the debris, flanked by hulking elite guards. Did you really think you could hide from me? The Corax commander snarled. Jeffrey raised his rifle. Who's hiding? The chamber erupted in chaos. Energy bolts crisscrossed the air as both sides took cover behind ancient consoles. Jeffrey's team fought with desperate fury, knowing the future of the stars hung in the balance. Sarah vaulted over a barrier, her boot connecting with a guard's face. She spun, using the momentum to drive her vibroblade into a weak point in its armor. Zarek bellowed a war cry, his scavenger crew unleashing a barrage of cobbled-together weaponry. The main console, Jeffrey shouted. We need to activate it now. Sarah and Zarek fought their way to the controls. Morthax realized their plan a moment too late. No, he roared. Sarah's hand slammed down on the activation sequence. The chamber hummed with building power. A wave of energy exploded outward, racing beyond the planet's atmosphere. In orbit, Corax ships began to drift, their systems going dark one by one. Jeffrey allowed himself a grim smile. The tide had turned, but as he looked at Morthax's fury-twisted face, He knew the real war was just beginning. Jeffrey stood before the assembled rebel leaders, his eyes burning with a fierce intensity. The holograms of various alien species flickered around the war room, each representing a different system ready to strike against the Korax dominion. "Kalvara," Jeffrey's voice rang out, silencing the murmurs. "That's our target. We hit their capital. We break their back." Colonel Hawkins leaned forward, his weathered face creased with concern. "It's a suicide mission, Jeffrey. Their defenses are impenetrable." "Not anymore," Jeffrey replied, activating a holographic display of the Korax homeworld. "Thanks to our Kaldi friends, we have a way in." The plan unfolded before them, a daring infiltration disguised as a supply convoy. Sarah studied the schematics, her mind already racing through potential scenarios. "We'll need a distraction," she said, "something big enough to draw their forces away." Jeffrey nodded, already in motion. Rebel cells across a dozen systems are prepped for simultaneous strikes. As the meeting concluded, Jeffrey pulled Sarah, Raxer, and Zarek aside. "You three are with me on point. We go in first, hit hard, and open the door for the main assault." Zarek grinned, his scarred face a map of past battles. "Just like old times, eh?" Hours later, their stolen Korax freighter slipped into the massive supply convoy bound for Kalvara. Jeffrey's team huddled in the cargo hold, tension thick in the recycled air. "Approaching outer defense perimeter," Sarah's voice crackled over the comm. "Stand by." Long minutes ticked by as automated scans washed over their ship. Jeffrey's enhanced hearing picked up the nervous breathing of his team. Suddenly, alarms blared. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. "We've been made! Korax boarding parties incoming!" The cargo bay doors exploded inward. Jeffrey's rifle snapped up, dropping 2 Korax soldiers before they could clear the threshold. Raxer roared, all 4 arms a whirlwind of blades as he carved through the attackers. "We need an exit!" Zarek shouted, his cobbled-together energy weapon spitting fire. Sarah's voice came through again. "I've got an idea. Brace for impact." The ship lurched violently. Through the breach, Jeffrey saw they were on a collision course with a massive communications array. He grabbed a support beam as the freighter smashed into the structure, metal screaming and sparks flying. As the dust settled, Jeffrey pulled himself up. "Sarah, you okay?" "Never better," she replied, stumbling out of the cockpit. "Kalvara's defensive grid is down. Let's move." They spilled out into the chaos of the Korax capital. Alarms wailed and energy weapons crisscrossed the sky. Jeffrey tapped his comm. "All teams, execute your objectives. Hit them hard, hit them fast." Raxor peeled off with his Vaxian warriors heading for the shipyards. Zarek and his scavengers melted into the shadows, making for the Planetary Defense Command. Jeffrey and Sarah fought their way through the streets, each step bringing them closer to the heart of Korax power. They linked up with Zarek's team outside the command center, the scavengers having already disabled the outer defenses. As they breached the final security door, a massive figure stood waiting. Morthax, the Korax commander, his armor gleaming and weapons primed. "So," Morthax's voice boomed. The human vermin revealed themselves at last. Jeffrey raised his rifle. "It ends here, Morthax." The 2 titans clashed, augmented human strength against Korax battle tech. Sarah and the scavengers engaged Morthax's guards, the air thick with energy bolts and the smell of ozone. Jeffrey's armor cracked under Morthax's relentless assault. He stumbled, his enhanced reflexes barely keeping him alive. Sarah saw her father falter and tried to reach him, but the press of combat kept her pinned down. Just as Morthax seemed poised for the killing blow, a familiar war cry split the air. Raxer burst into the command center, his Vaxian warriors at his back. The tide turned. Morthax, seeing defeat looming, snarled and lunged for a control panel. "If I fall, I'm taking you all with me." The room filled with warning klaxons as Morthax initiated an overload of Kalvara's planetary defense grid. Energy readings spiked to catastrophic levels. Sarah vaulted over a fallen guard, her hands flying over the alien controls. "Dad, I can stop it, but..." Jeffrey saw the look in her eyes and knew. Time seemed to slow as Sarah made her choice. disrupting the overload sequence even as lethal energy arced through her body. With her last ounce of strength, Sarah fired her weapon, catching Morthax in a vulnerable spot. The Corax commander fell, and with him, the heart of the Dominion's power. As the dust settled, Jeffrey cradled his daughter's body, tears cutting trails through the grime on his face. Around them, the rebels began broadcasting their victory to the stars, calling for a galaxy-wide uprising against Corax rule. Days later, on a quiet hill overlooking the scarred Calvarin landscape, Jeffrey stood before a simple marker. He placed his hand on the sun-warmed stone, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll finish this, Sarah, I promise." He turned to face the assembled rebel forces, their numbers swollen by new recruits from across the Dominion. His voice carried across the crowd. "Today, we mourn. Tomorrow, we march on the Corax homeworld, and we end this war, once and for all." Jeffrey stood on the bridge of the flagship, his eyes fixed on the swirling cosmic storm ahead. The celestial convergence painted the viewport with a kaleidoscope of colors, masking the approach of the rebel armada. "All ships maintain formation," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his gut. "Raxer, status on the ground teams?" The comm crackled to life. "Warriors ready, Jeffrey. We await your signal." Jeffrey nodded, though his Vaxian friend couldn't see it. "Zarek, how's our infiltration looking?" "Like taking candy from a baby," the gruff scavenger replied. "My crew's itching to cause some chaos." As the fleet pushed through the cosmic veil, alarms blared. Corax defense platforms struggled to lock on, their targeting systems scrambled by the convergence. "Now!" Jeffrey barked. The rebel ships surged forward, weapons blazing. Jeffrey's enhanced senses processed the battle in hyper-clarity. The flash of energy weapons, the silent explosions of Corax vessels caught off guard. He led the charge planetside, his dropship weaving through anti-aircraft fire. The moment they touched down, Jeffrey was moving, his rifle spitting death at the Corax defenders. Raxer's Vaxian warriors poured from their ships, scale-armored titans wielding monomolecular blades. They carved through the Corax ranks, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. Jeffrey fought his way through the streets of the alien capital, every step bringing him closer to the Imperial Palace. The stench of ozone and burning flesh filled the air as energy weapons discharged around him. "Zarek, we need those power grids down!" he shouted into his comm. "Working on it," came the strained reply. "These Corax don't make it easy there." The city plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered to life, casting eerie shadows across the alien architecture. Jeffrey pressed on, his augmented muscles propelling him forward with inhuman speed. He burst through the palace gates, cutting down the Emperor's personal guard with cold efficiency. A massive figure emerged from the shadows, eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. Zorvax, Emperor of the Corax Dominion. "So, the human vermin crawls from the dirt," Zorvax sneered, raising a crackling energy blade. Jeffrey said nothing, letting his actions speak for him. He lunged forward, narrowly avoiding a slash that would have cut him in two. The two titans clashed, Jeffrey's enhanced reflexes pitted against Zorvax's centuries of combat experience. They traded blows that would have shattered normal beings, neither willing to give ground. Zorvax's blade found a chink in Jeffrey's armor, searing flesh. Jeffrey gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain to land a crushing blow to the Emperor's midsection. Just as Zorvax seemed to gain the upper hand, the palace trembled. A wave of energy washed over them, and Jeffrey knew the Azrathil weapon had been activated. Zorvax stumbled, momentarily distracted. It was all the opening Jeffrey needed. He surged forward, disarming the alien ruler and pinning him to the ground. "It's over," Jeffrey growled. Zorvax's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. "Not yet, human." The floor beneath them shuddered. Klaxons wailed as hidden panels slid open, revealing a massive device thrumming with power. "The doomsday weapon," Jeffrey breathed. He sprinted for the controls, Zorvax hot on his heels. They grappled at the edge of the platform, the countdown sequence already initiated. Jeffrey's muscles screamed as he fought against Zorvax's alien strength. With a final burst of effort, He hurled the Emperor over the railing and lunged for the control panel. His fingers flew over the alien interface, mind racing to decipher the sequence. The device pulsed faster, ready to unleash devastation. With seconds to spare, Jeffrey input the final command. The doomsday weapon powered down, its apocalyptic purpose unfulfilled. He sagged against the console, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm him, but there was no time to rest. The battle for Dakura and the future of the galaxy was a long way to go. Jeffrey's weathered hands gripped the control console as the ship bucked violently. The unstable wormhole tore at the vessel's hull, alarms blaring throughout the command deck. Structural integrity at 62% and falling, Kalen shouted over the din, his young face etched with concentration as he fought to keep them on course. Raxor's massive form loomed behind Jeffrey, all four arms braced against bulkheads. "We cannot sustain this trajectory." "We have no choice," Jeffrey growled, his augmented eyes tracking the swirling chaos outside the viewscreen. "It's this or face the Xerian armada." The ship lurched again, throwing Zarek to the deck. The grizzled scavenger pulled himself up, a string of colorful curses escaping his lips. "If we make it through this, I'm going to need a drink. Or 10. Suddenly, the wormhole spat them out into unfamiliar space. The inky void before them was dotted with structures that defied description, geometric shapes that seemed to fold in on themselves, pulsing with otherworldly energy. "By the gods!" Raxor breathed, his alien features contorted in awe. Jeffrey's enhanced senses struggled to process the impossible vista. "Zarek, get me a reading on our location." The scavenger captain hunched over his console, fingers dancing across alien controls. "Nothing makes sense. According to these readings, we're simultaneously in a dozen different spatial coordinates." "It's them," Jeffrey said, his voice low. "The Xerians. This must be the edge of their territory." As if in response to his words, a massive structure phased into existence directly ahead. It dwarfed their ship, a labyrinthine complex of twisting corridors and pulsating energy fields. "Evasive maneuvers," Jeffrey barked. Kalen's hands flew across the controls, but the ship refused to respond. "We're caught in some kind of tractor beam." The team watched helplessly as they were drawn inexorably towards the colossal structure. As they neared, Jeffrey's enhanced vision picked out details that made his blood run cold. Entire sections of the construct seemed to be composed of living tissue, pulsing and writhing in sync with the energy fields. "What is this place?" Raxor asked, his normally stoic voice tinged with unease. "If I had to guess," Zarek replied grimly, "I'd say we found the Xerian homeworld, or what passes for one in this madhouse." The ship shuddered as it passed through an energy barrier, coming to rest in a cavernous docking bay. Shapes moved in the shadows, vaguely humanoid, but with proportions that seemed to shift and change as Jeffrey tried to focus on them. "We need to move," Jeffrey said, checking the charge on his rifle. "Whatever happens, we stick together. Our mission stands. Find the source of their power and shut it down." As the team prepared to disembark, Kalen approached Jeffrey. "Sir, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this chance." Jeffrey clasped the young pilot's shoulder, memories of Sarah flashing through his mind. "You've more than proven yourself, son. Now let's go make your mother proud." The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Gravity shifted unpredictably, and distant sounds echoed from impossible angles. Jeffrey took point, his augmented senses straining to make sense of their surroundings. Raxor followed, his four arms each wielding a different weapon. Zarek and Kalen brought up the rear, the seasoned scavenger keeping a protective eye on the young pilot. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the Xerian stronghold, Jeffrey couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not just by the Xerians, but by the very structure itself. Every step felt like a gamble, every breath a risk. But the future of the stars hung in the balance, and Jeffrey had made a promise. To Sarah, to the countless lives lost in the war against the Korax, and to every soul threatened by the Xerian menace. He would see this through, no matter the consequences. The unstable wormhole spat them out into a realm that defied comprehension. Jeffrey's enhanced senses struggled to process the kaleidoscope of energies swirling around their battered ship. Fractals of impossible geometry stretched as far as the eye could see, punctuated by vast artificial constructs that pulsed with otherworldly power. "Status report!" Jeffrey barked, gripping the command console as the ship shuddered violently. Zarek's fingers danced across his terminal, his face grim. "Bad news, Chief. Hull integrity's shot to hell. We're venting atmosphere in 3 sections." Kalen fought with the controls, his young face beaded with sweat. "I can't hold her together much longer, sir. We need to set down somewhere fast." Jeffrey scanned the swirling chaos outside the viewport, his augmented vision picking out a desolate moon orbiting the cosmic maelstrom. "There, take us in, Kalen." The ship screamed as it entered the moon's thin atmosphere, hull plates tearing away under the stress. With a bone-jarring impact, they slammed into the dusty surface, skidding to a halt in a cloud of pulverized rock. As the dust settled, Jeffrey pulled himself to his feet, ignoring the taste of blood in his mouth. Everyone still breathing? Raxor's massive form emerged from a tangle of cables, all 4 of his arms checking various systems. "We live, but the ship is beyond repair." Jeffrey nodded grimly. "Zarek, what can you tell me about our location?" The grizzled scavenger captain worked his console, his face illuminated by flickering displays. "You're not going to like this, Jeff. Long-range scans are picking up, well, I don't even know how to describe it." Jeffrey leaned in, his eyes widening as he took in the data. Entire star systems hung suspended in the void, frozen in perfect stasis. Billions of lives, countless civilizations, all trapped like insects in amber. "The Xerian Collective," Jeffrey breathed. "We've found their home." Kalen's voice cut through the stunned silence. "Sir, I'm picking up an energy signature on the surface. It's faint, but it doesn't match any known Xerion tech." Jeffrey's mind raced, formulating a plan. "All right, listen up. We split into 2 teams. Raxor, you and your warriors secure the crash site. Zarek, Kalen, you're with me. We're going to check out that energy signature." They geared up quickly, donning protective suits to shield them from the moon's harsh environment. Jeffrey led the way across the barren landscape, his enhanced muscles easily compensating for the low gravity. After a grueling trek, they found themselves at the entrance to a vast subterranean complex. Ancient glyphs adorned crumbling walls, their meaning lost to time. "Watch your step," Jeffrey warned as they descended into the darkness. Their helmet lights cast eerie shadows as they navigated through twisting corridors and vast chambers. Suddenly, Kalen called out, "Sir, over here." In the center of a cavernous room stood a pillar of softly pulsing light. As they approached, a holographic interface flickered to life, resolving into the image of a being unlike any Jeffrey had ever seen. "Greetings, Seekers," the artificial intelligence spoke, its voice echoing with the weight of eons. "I am the last legacy of those you would call the precursors. I have waited long for one such as you to arrive." Jeffrey stepped forward, his voice steady. "We've come to stop the Xerion Collective. Can you help us?" The AI's form shimmered, and it began to speak of cosmic paradoxes and the terrible power the Xerians had harnessed. As the truth of their enemies' godlike abilities became clear, Jeffrey felt a familiar fire ignite in his chest. They had come too far to turn back now. The fate of humanity and all alien species hung in the balance, and Jeffrey knew that the final battle was about to begin. The AI's holographic form flickered and faded, leaving Jeffrey and his team in stunned silence. The weight of their victory against the Xerian Collective settled upon them. A bittersweet triumph tinged with the knowledge of the sacrifices made. Months passed as the Allies worked tirelessly to rebuild worlds shattered by the temporal war. Jeffrey's absence left a void, his heroic sacrifice etched into the annals of history. On a bustling space station orbiting New Terra, Zarek hunched over a flickering console, sifting through encrypted transmissions. Holy shit, he breathed, eyes widening. Kalen, get over here! The young pilot rushed to Zarek's side, peering at the screen. What is it? It's about Sarah, Zarek said, his voice tight. She's alive. Before they could process this revelation, alarms blared throughout the station. Raxer burst into the command center, his massive frame filling the doorway. We have a situation. Zirion tech has surfaced in the hands of the Senkethi. Kalen's face paled. How bad? Temporal disruptors, Raxer growled. Enough to freeze entire star systems. Within hours, Raxer led a strike team into the lawless expanse of the Rylian Drift. Their ship cut through the void, sensors on high alert for any sign of Senkethi activity. Suddenly, a barrage of weapons fire erupted from a nearby asteroid field. Evasive maneuvers, Raxer bellowed, bracing himself as the ship lurched violently. Senkethi fighters swarmed around them, their weapons punching holes in the hull. Raxer's team returned fire, but they were vastly outnumbered. A blinding flash filled the view screen, and Raxer felt himself yanked from the ship by an unseen force. He awoke in a cold, dark cell. A hulking figure loomed over him. Venerax, the Senkethi warlord. Welcome, Raxer. I trust you'll enjoy your stay. Days blurred together as Raxer endured relentless interrogation. His body ached, but his will remained unbroken. I'll tell you nothing, he spat, glaring at Venerax. The warlord simply smiled. We'll see about that. Meanwhile, Kalen led a rescue team to a desolate planet deep in the drift. They crept through winding corridors, weapons at the ready. As they rounded a corner, Kalen froze. There, suspended in a shimmering field of temporal energy, was Raxer. His once proud form twisted in agony, trapped between moments of time. Over here, a voice hissed. Kalen spun to see Sarah, her face gaunt but her eyes burning with defiance. She gestured to a nearby control panel. I can overload it, but we need to move fast. Blaster fire erupted around them as Senkethi guards swarmed the chamber. Kalen's team fought back fiercely, buying Sarah the precious seconds she needed. Her fingers flew over the alien controls, sweat beading on her brow. Got it, she shouted as the temporal field began to fluctuate wildly. The compound shook violently, walls cracking as the overload spread through its systems. Kalen slung Raxer's barely conscious form over his shoulder, shouting to his team, Move! Move! They sprinted through collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris and sporadic weapons fire. Sarah stumbled, but Kalen caught her arm, pulling her along. They burst out into harsh sunlight just as the compound imploded behind them, a swirling vortex of temporal energy collapsing in on itself. As the dust settled, Sarah scanned the horizon, her heart sinking. Venerax, he got away. Back on the Allied command ship, Sarah stood before Jeffrey's closest friends and comrades. Her voice wavered as she spoke. My father, he gave everything to stop the Zirians. I won't let his sacrifice be in vain. Kalen stepped forward, perseverance etched on his young face. We'll find Venerax. Together. Sarah nodded, her eyes hardening with dedication. Let's finish this. Their ship streaked through the stars, venturing deeper into the lawless fringes of known space. The hunt for Venerax had begun, and with it, a chance to prevent a new temporal apocalypse from engulfing the galaxy.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.